This is Warhawk Beyond 2040, and welcome to another edition of the Flash Season 8 review series. And today I am going to be talking about Episode 2, Armageddon Part 2, which is part of the 5-part crossover event, which I have just finished watching. And this was fantastic and a great follow up to Part 1. And this part really picked up momentum in a big way. And the way everything unfolded was you knew things were not quite what they seemed. And I just loved it. I just thought this was absolutely fantastic. And as I mentioned at the end of the last edition, where I talked about part one of the Armageddon crossover event, you can definitely see some of that old Flash magic is slowly coming back. You know, it was more focused on the Flash, more of him in costume, lots of great Flash action, lots of great dialogue. You know, I'm really happy to see the show getting back to its best. And, you know, this is part two of a 5-part crossover event, and in this part, we saw Alex Danvers from Supergirl lend her support, even though she only had 2 scenes, which were very small cameo roles. Her involvement was an important one, so we didn't really get to see another hero team up with the Flash, but this doesn't take away from the fact that this was still a fantastic episode. So basically, what's happened so far is a villain called Despero has come from the future to essentially stop Barry from destroying the world. Now, the revelation we've learned that in 2031, the Flash is supposed to go full blown rogue and destroy anything and everything and everyone. Now, the only time you ever hear something like that about another hero, it has been Superman. So this has been a very interesting story that's been explored here for season 8. So, according to Despero, that a great tragedy will cause Barry to not only lose his mind but snap and descend into madness and just go on an absolute rampage. Now, we do learn a revelation about a beloved character who's been a mainstay of The Flash since its inception, which really shocked me to my core. More on that in a moment, but Despero is here basically to stop The Flash from destroying the world. Very powerful stuff here. But I love the way this just carried on from part one. And as I said, this was a lot of fun and I loved every second of it, especially towards the end. It really picked up and it just made me more pumped up for part three. And also at the end of part two, we saw a very familiar face make his return to help the Flash. And I'll tell you who that is in a moment also. But by and large, love part two. Great follow up to part one. Bring on part three. That's all I've got to say. So let's get straight into it. Let's talk about episode 2, Armageddon, part 2. So this episode picks up where we left off at the end of part 1, where we see Despero attacks Barry, even though they have called a truce, and he has said to him that you have 7 days to prove yourself that you are telling the truth, or I will come back to kill you. And Despero tells Barry that he still plans to change the future, and he knows the force he will need to use to kill Barry when that time comes. Despero also tells Barry that the reason he turns on the world is because he goes mad. A tragedy is coming that will make him lose his mind, and that tragedy begins the following day. Within C, Team Flash connects with Alex Danvers, and she gives them access to the tower's alien database, but they have no information on Despero. She's going to keep looking as he could be a major threat. Allegra wants to protect Barry, but Frost isn't so sure that Barry might not be a threat, as he may have leveled up too fast and there is a precedent for those concerned. Barry gives the team a pep talk and says they will all have to do something to prove Despero wrong by making it through the next 24 hours with his sanity intact. Frost and Chester sit down to work on a plan, but Frost asks him to build a weapon to harm Despero rather than come up with a way to restrain or contain him. Chester doesn't seem comfortable with this, and the next morning Barry and Iris are uneasy about things, but Iris reassures him things will be okay. Barry heads to work as there has been a bank robbery and the guards spontaneously went insane, which allowed for the robbery to happen in the first place. However, before Barry can get to work, we then see Crema shows up to stop him as he is under investigation for federal crimes and has been suspended and ordered to hand over his badge. He's suspected of being a mole for Carver, and while Kramer seems to believe in Barry's innocence, he still has to turn over his badge anyway, despite his plea to keep working. Barry goes to see Cecile and she's pretty heated about the situation, but their conversation is cut short when Despero projects himself into the room as he's keeping an eye on Barry's mental state. Cecile suggests Despero is what drives him insane, but Barry thinks the security guard situation is more connected to things and he goes to talk to the guard. The Stilton guard mutters the name Zotar before Barry gets an emergency call from Caitlin. We then see Star Labs has been shut down due to a radiation leak, and it turns out that the systems in place that should have caught the issue are damaged and there are significant radiation issues. Star Labs will have to be encased in a sarcophagus, Chernobyl style, and then destroyed and remediated if that's what the city decides. The team is then given 5 minutes to get their people out, and Team Flash quickly gets to work gathering what they need and sealing off the sensitive areas. Barry ends up having to wipe Gideon and the Flash records in order to protect his secret identity, something that he does reluctantly. We then see Gideon shut down and leaves a final message saying, "It's been an honor serving you, Barry," and as she shuts down. The team grabs what they can and they leave the building. Team Flash reconvenes at Barry's loft, but Barry remains optimistic that they can still prove Despero wrong. He thinks Zotar is the explanation for things and tasks Iris and her reporters to find out who or what Zotar is. It turns out Zotar is a meta who has psychic powers that can make people go insane. The Flash goes to confront her, but she attacks him. The next thing Barry knows, he's in his own home, which has been destroyed, and Team Flash is in defensive mode against him. Seems he attacked him, but has no memory of it. Caitlin is able to confirm he's himself now, so they stand down. Barry is more convinced than ever that Zotar is the problem. They now know that they need to take down Zotar. Meanwhile, searching for Zotar, Despero and the Flash have a confrontation, and the Flash asks Despero what he's hiding. Despero reveals that his own world was overrun by evil, and he saw his people suffer and die. When he and some others attempted a coup, he showed mercy to the despot, which has turned out to be a mistake. He reveals things ultimately got worse. There was more suffering. Despero was banished to Earth and saw horrible things happen on Earth due to the Flash, and he will not stand by to see another homeworld be destroyed. Meanwhile, at Chester's place, Allegra confronts him about the weapon Frost made him build, and after hearing why Chester is a pacifist, convinces him that he has to be true to himself. They get a lead on Zotar, and the Flash goes to stop her at the robbery of an armored car transporting art for the museum. She also uses telekinesis on the Flash and is hurting him pretty badly, but the Flash taps into her previous unknown power to self-generate lightning. He is able to take her down, and as soon as she's apprehended with metacuffs, the people she made insane recover fully. Now, this was just a little sample of how powerful the Flash has truly become. And as I mentioned in the last edition, you can definitely see Barry getting more confident in his powers, and he's definitely getting a lot more faster. So to actually see him use this kind of power was a big surprise, but at the same time, a welcome one. Victorious, the team decides to get lunch, and Barry suggests they have Joe make them a meal, and that's when the tragedy is revealed. We learn that Joe West has been dead for 6 months. Don't ask me how, but I'm sure we're going to know why. And they are stunned he doesn't seem to know this, and Barry, very distraught and disbelieving, Barry races to the West house where Iris and Cecile also insist Joe is dead, and there was even a memorial plaque that shows Joe West died back in May. Barry apparently even gave the eulogy but has no memory of it, and the news also shows a report that after stopping Zotar, the Flash apparently went mad, attacked City Hall, and innocent people there. Barry has no memory of this, and that's when we see Despero shows up, convinced Barry is losing his mind. He attacks but is stopped by Chester, who has developed a weapon that would stun him. It gives Barry a chance to flee. Alex Danvers gives Team Flash an update about Despero, explaining that his flame of Pattaya was previously believed to be a legend, and that the first people to encounter a Kalorian. Kara and John are off-world, but Alex is on the case. Meanwhile, Barry goes to the Hall of Justice where we see the Green Arrow suit is up there in tribute to Oliver Queen, and he meets up with Jefferson Pierce, aka Black Lightning. Black Lightning asks what is going on, and Barry simply tells him, injustice. Hmm, interesting. Black Lightning's face registers shock and perhaps even horror, and we end the scene with Barry asking Black Lightning for his help. And that's how we end Armageddon Part 2. Overall, as I mentioned, this was a fantastic follow up to Part 1. Really enjoyed this one a lot. And, Joe West dying. I didn't see that one coming. How did that happen? I'm sure we are going to learn about what happened to Joe West very soon, but I do believe this is all just an illusion, and I believe we're going to find out who really is behind all of this. But damn, what an amazing second part of the Armageddon crossover event. And Black Lightning back. Can't wait. Can't wait to see what happens next. But overall, this was a really good second part of the Armageddon crossover. And bring on part 3. That's all I'm going to say. So that's going to be it from me. I am going to wrap this up now. What was your thoughts on Armageddon Part 2? Did you enjoy it? How do you think Joe West died? Do you think maybe this is an illusion? And if so, who do you think is really behind this? And also, Barry going mad. Do you think it is true? Do you think he really could cause the end of the world? And also, what kind of role do you think Black Lightning is going to play for Part 3 of the Armageddon crossover? And also, do you think Alex Danvers should have been more involved in this one? Do you think maybe she should have been stepping in to help Team Flash out? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below. And I will see all of you next time for another edition of the Flash Season 8 review series, where I am going to be talking about Episode 3, which is Part 3 of the Armageddon crossover, which I'm very much looking forward to, especially with the way this one ended. Should be a blast. Can't wait to talk about it and can't wait to see it. So until next time, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And once again, thanks for listening.